Today's film is a horror thriller from 2025 titled Last Breath. The film opens underwater, where humans have laid out a 22,000-foot-long pipeline that sprawled across the entire ocean. To maintain the pipeline, saturation divers are professionally hired, who can dive up to 1,000 feet in the depths of the enigmatic ocean. It is told that their job is considered to be one of the most dangerous ones around the world. Scenes cut to our lead, Chris, driving home to his fiancée in a town called Aberdeenshire in Scotland. Chris sees the worries in her eyes, so he assures her he'll be fine. Scenes cut straight to the Aberdeenshire Sea Harbor, where Chris arrives and checks himself out as one of the divers before boarding the dive support vessel. He greets his senior named Craig and hugs his buddy Duncan in the hallway. Duncan shares that they've changed the captain. Chris hopes he turns out to be more lenient than the previous one. After catching up, Chris walks away and passes by the busy crew to get to the changing room, where he finds from fellow divers that the Vulcan Diver 1 will be joining them this time. Moving forward, their senior, Craig, rounds them up for the debriefing of their mission, which is to replace a section of the pipeline under his supervision. They must fix it before the gas leaks from it and fails to warm up people's houses this winter. The divers will be living inside a tin can-like tube for about a month and will be pressurized down to 300 feet under the ocean. Once they succeed in replacing the pipeline section, they will undergo a 4-day decompression process. It will help them get used to the normal atmospheric pressure before coming back to the surface. Now Craig splits the divers into multiple teams. Chris is paired up with Duncan and the Vulcan diver named Dave. As the boys are given 10 minutes to get ready for departure, Chris approaches Dave to nicely introduce himself, but Dave turns out to be reluctant. When Chris awkwardly leaves, Duncan lightens him up regarding Chris by praising how he railed himself for 3 years at the deckhand to become a diver. Upon Dave's asking, Duncan tells him Chris has dived with him on 5 missions so far. When they get inside the tubes, each team is provided one compartment with bunk beds and a small lounge space. While Duncan calls dibs on the bottom bunk, Chris is quick to tape Morag's picture beside his bed space. Dave takes note of it and advises him not to distract him with such stuff from the outside world and focus on his mission instead. When he leaves and sits alone in the lounge section, Duncan cheers Chris up. He assures Chris that Dave is only being tough because of the job. Chris forgets about his demeanor when he spots Duncan stocking chocolates for the entire month. Now Craig watches them through surveillance monitors and communicates with them through radio. All 3 teams confirm their status, so Craig closes their chamber doors from the control room and starts the gas pressurizing process. Subsequently, the captain sails the DSV. The navigators show they're headed in the Huntington oil fields direction. The crew also monitors the entire operation on DSV. Craig shuts the gas valves once it compresses the diver's tube-like container. Over the radio, he does stand-up comedy for the divers and tells them they can operate now 300 feet under the sea level, where it's pitch black and freezing cold. He warns them not to come out of their chambers prior to the decompression process, or else the gas saturating their bodies will expand rapidly and rupture their vital organs. After making sure Chris and Dave are fine, Craig signs off and tells them he'll be back in contact with them from the station. Thereafter, Dave puts on his headphones and exercises by the bed space. Duncan interrupts him and invites him for lunch. They scoop up in the lounge booth and make small talk. Duncan reveals that the company is retiring him after 20 years of service. He's upset because he thought he could work for a decade more. Dave consoles him by laying out a possibility that their jobs will become automated over the next decade. Chris feels bad for Duncan and asks him to pursue the management department, which is appropriate for the seniors such as Craig. However, Duncan doesn't find that thrilling enough. The next day, Chris gets a video message from Morag about their wedding plan and saying hello to Duncan. On the other hand, the container's coordinates are forwarded to the Marine Control, where Craig sits beside the captain. The captain worries about the predicted storm, which is said to have an impact stronger than told before. Craig tells him not to worry, as he's sure that their divers are far in the north and won't face the storm at all. Soon, the dynamic position system activates itself and allows the ship to remain in a stay-put position without throwing down the anchor. The captain finally gives Craig the cue to begin their diving operation. Craig forwards the message to the divers through radio and gives them time to put on their diving suits that are geared up with safety measures such as flares, knives, and compasses. Duncan climbs the diving bell first and reports it to the station. When it's Dave's turn to climb, he tells Chris to concentrate and follow his lead as he's new. Their team is the first to reach the bell. The ship's ground is opened, and their chamber is lowered to 300 feet deep into the sea. During this, Duncan, Chris, and Dave face slight turbulence. Craig lets them know once they're fully lowered to the determined point. Duncan prepares Dave by attaching a pipe with a warm water supply to prevent him from freezing. He also connects the oxygen supply cable called the umbilical cord to his helmet, which will also help communicate. Dave dives in the infinite sea first, and Chris follows after him. Duncan stays in the bell to operate the cables. Chris, being new to this, starts breathing fast, so Duncan tells him to calm down. Now the ship drops the power cable, which the divers connect to activate the manifold. While reporting their progress to Craig, Chris discovers the gas levels inside the manifold are higher than they normally should be. When he enters the manifold to fix this, Craig discovers they've lost their hydroacoustic and can't hear or study the ocean waves any longer. Scenes cut back to Chris fixing the manifold when the ship realizes their thrusters have shut down too and are causing their ship to move. The storm wind makes the tides a bit choppy, due to which they sense the danger coming. Dave figures the boat is not in one position and is slowly drifting, so he tries to communicate this with Chris and tells him to come out of the manifold. Back on board, the dynamic position system completely fails, due to which the crew loses control of the boat. Craig immediately orders Duncan to abort the mission and extend the umbilical cables until they reach Dave and Chris, who climb onto the manifold with the help of the umbilical cord, but it gets stuck to the manifold and snags. Meanwhile, the ship completely spirals out of control and starts to tilt due to the outrageous storm. It causes the power cable to detach from the seabed and plunges darkness on board. While the team becomes aware of this, Chris's umbilical cable starts tugging on him, due to which he starts breathing heavily again and runs low on oxygen. Dave instructs him to switch to his backup oxygen and relaxes him. Duncan also reports that Chris doesn't have more than 10 minutes until he fully runs out of oxygen. Dave realizes Chris's umbilical is about to snap any minute and pulls him away from the structure, so he asks Chris to get back to the manifold from where he can find him. Unfortunately, Chris's umbilical snaps right away and adrift him in the infinite dark sea.
Coming back to you now. Val, do you copy?
Craig also loses visuals of the divers and becomes concerned. The remotely operated vehicle gives them a quick glimpse of Dave returning to Duncan in the bell. Duncan becomes traumatized and reports he's lost Chris as his umbilical severed. On Chris's end, he lights up a flare and tries to contact Duncan through the comms. When he gets no signals,
Duncan, I can't see you! Duncan, I don't know where I am! Manifold.
he recalls Dave's instructions and heads back to the manifold. In the station, they find out their thrusters have restarted, but the position system remains shut. The captain and his officer decide to navigate the ship manually to prevent it from further drifting and stay close to Chris's whereabouts. After struggling, they control the boat and find out they're 630 feet away from where the divers dived. Chris, meanwhile, collapses in the manifold in fear of losing Morag. The captain and his officer refute restarting the position system, which might take hours, and decide to come up with some other solution to make their boat still. Consequently, the remotely operating vehicle finds Chris in the manifold.
Closing.
Can anyone see anything?
Where the hell is he?
What about up top?
Seeing the footage, Craig is quick to judge that Chris is dead. Meanwhile, the officer finds out a way to restart the position system by rewiring its backup CPU to prevent the delay in the reboot. The captain contemplates and finds it risky, but tells the officer to go with it since they're out of options. Craig is stopped from using the operating vehicle to rescue Chris since it's risky, so Craig takes it upon himself to operate the vehicle and rescue Chris. Craig struggles to tether the unconscious Chris on the vehicle as he had clasped himself onto the manifold structure to prevent himself from getting swept away by the tides before fainting.
Unconscious.
It's been 16 minutes after he ran out of oxygen, yet his hand is seen spasming. Scenes shift to Duncan, who is utterly sad. He shares with Dave his first dive mission with Chris and vows to bring Chris back to his fiancée at any cost. Back in the station, the officer succeeds in activating the position system and holding the boat still. With this problem off their shoulders, they plan on rescuing Chris. They inform Duncan and Dave about Chris's exact location, so Dave is prepared to dive back into the sea to get him. Dave locates him and unclasps him from the structure. However, his unconscious body weight slows Dave down as he tries to swim back up with him. Dave doesn't give up on Chris and struggles twice as hard to bring him back to the Belle.
You can do this, buddy. Now!
Despite Chris looking bluer than a corpse, Duncan performs CPR on him. Chris remains unconscious as he was out of oxygen for about half an hour. The crew watches them and gets in despair, but Chris chokes and struggles to breathe, which relieves everyone else. They cheer him up, and the captain decides to return immediately by taking a shorter route. The divers are allowed to go home on day 1 of their decompression. Dave comes to medically check Chris. Chris confesses how he felt when he was dying of hopelessness under the ocean. After thanking Dave for saving his life, he calls Morag and tells her everything. She's relieved to know he made it back. Soon, the decompression process completes, and he gets to bid farewell to Duncan and other divers before returning in Morag's arms. Here, the film ends. Thanks for watching. Please don't forget to like and subscribe for more awesome recaps.